The neon lights of New Singapore's underground market cast an eerie glow across Tessa Morgan's face as she adjusted her holographic disguise. The device hummed quietly against her neck, projecting the image of a wealthy merchant from the Centauri colonies. Her real appearance, dark skin, keen brown eyes, and close-cropped black hair, was hidden beneath the facade of extravagant wealth. The auction house loomed before her, a towering structure of black metal and shimmering force fields. Guards wearing powered armor flanked the entrance, their weapons scanning each guest for signs of deception. Tessa's pulse quickened, but she maintained her composure. The holodisguise was top-tier tech, stolen from a military research facility. It had to work. "Invitation," growled one of the guards. Tessa produced the forged credentials, watching as the guard's cybernetic eye scanned the document. After what felt like an eternity, he nodded and stepped aside. Inside, the auction house was a monument to suffering disguised as luxury. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, while anti-gravity platforms displayed merchandise, sentient beings from across the galaxy, held in stasis fields. Tessa's stomach churned as she moved through the crowd of wealthy buyers, their excitement palpable as they discussed their potential purchases like one might discuss livestock. Her target was supposed to be here, a Luminarian healer named Ariana, captured during a raid on a medical outpost. The Luminarians were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their extraordinary healing abilities and natural empathy. These same traits made them valuable targets for slavers. "Ladies, gentlemen, and beings of all designations," a booming voice echoed through the chamber. "Welcome to tonight's exclusive gathering. I am Krondar, your host and purveyor of the galaxy's finest specimens." The jailer stepped into view, his massive frame covered in ceremonial armor that gleamed under the chandeliers. His species was unknown, some said he was a genetic experiment, others claimed he was a hybrid of multiple warrior races. What everyone knew was his reputation for cruelty and his iron grip on the slave trade in this sector. The auction began, and Tessa watched in carefully concealed horror as various beings were displayed and sold. She kept her bidding paddle down, waiting. Finally, they brought out Ariana. The Luminarian woman stood with quiet dignity despite her chains. Her silvery skin seemed to glow from within, and her iridescent eyes surveyed the crowd with a calm that belied her situation. Markings that resembled constellations traced patterns across her exposed arms, a sign of her status as a master healer among her people. "Ah, our premium lot," Krondar announced, circling Ariana like a predator. "A fully trained Luminarian healer. Imagine, my distinguished guests, having the power to cure any ailment at your beck and call. Bidding starts at 1 million credits." The crowd erupted in a frenzy of bids. Tessa waited, watching the numbers climb. Her hand remained steady as she raised her paddle at precisely the right moment, offering a bid that made even Krondar pause. 5 million credits, nearly her entire operational budget. "Sold," Krondar declared, his eyes fixing on Tessa with uncomfortable intensity. To the merchant from Centauri. Guards led Ariana to a private reception room where buyers could collect their purchases. Tessa followed, her mind racing through the next phase of her plan. The room was smaller, more intimate, with only 2 guards present. As the door sealed behind them, Tessa's hand moved to her collar, ready to deactivate the holographic disguise. But before she could act, Krondar's voice filled the room through hidden speakers. "I must congratulate you on your excellent taste," he said, his tone dripping with false courtesy. "However, there's one small problem. You see, we ran a deeper scan of your credentials while you were bidding. There is no merchant matching your identity in the Centauri colonies." The guards raised their weapons. Tessa's mind raced, her cover was blown, but she wasn't out of options. She had planned for this possibility, even if she'd hoped to avoid it. "Now," Krondar continued, "shall we discuss who you really are, and what made you foolish enough to think you could deceive me?" Tessa looked at Ariana, their eyes meeting for a brief moment. In that instant, she saw something in the luminarian's gaze, not fear, but determination. Perhaps even hope. It was enough to confirm what Tessa had already decided: she hadn't come this far to fail now. Her hand moved to her collar again, but this time it wasn't to deactivate the disguise. Instead, she pressed a hidden pattern into the device's surface. Throughout the auction house, every security system simultaneously went dark, plunging the building into chaos. The real escape attempt was about to begin. In the sudden darkness, Tessa moved with practiced precision. Her fingers found the familiar grip of her neural disruptor, hidden beneath her elaborate disguise. The guard's enhanced vision systems, knocked out by her device's electromagnetic pulse, gave her the advantage she needed. "Stay close to me," she whispered to Ariana, grabbing the luminarian's arm. The healer's skin was cool to the touch, and Tessa felt a slight tingling sensation, the empathic connection her species was known for. Through the chaos of screaming guests and shouting guards, they made their way toward the service corridors. Tessa had memorized the building's layout from stolen blueprints, but knowing a path and reaching it were two very different challenges. "You're different," Ariana spoke for the first time, her voice carrying a musical quality even in whispers. "Your mind, it's focused, determined. Not like the others here." "Save the analysis for later," Tessa replied, pressing them both against a wall as a squad of guards rushed past. "Right now, we need to." An alarm blared through the building, its pitch making Tessa's teeth ache. Emergency lights clicked on, bathing the corridors in a blood-red glow. Kronlar's voice boomed through the speakers once more. "Lockdown initiated. All exits are sealed. To my honored guests, please remain calm. To our uninvited friend, you've just made the last mistake of your life." Tessa cursed under her breath. She'd hoped for more time before the backup systems engaged. "Change of plans," she muttered, pulling Ariana toward a maintenance shaft. "Hope you're not afraid of heights." They climbed through the narrow shaft, the metal warm against their hands from the building's power systems. Above them, Tessa could hear the sounds of guards searching, their heavy boots thundering on the overhead walkways. "They're going to find us," Ariana stated, not with fear but with certainty. "I can sense them, their anger, their determination." "Probably," Tessa agreed, reaching a junction in the shaft. "But they're not the only ones who came prepared." She pulled a small device from her belt, a gravity manipulator, technically illegal in most civilized systems. "Hold on to me. Tight." Ariana wrapped her arms around Tessa's waist just as the sound of boots grew closer. Tessa activated the device, and suddenly they were falling sideways, the artificial gravity field pulling them through a horizontal shaft at breakneck speed. They emerged in what appeared to be a waste processing center, the smell of industrial cleaners burning their nostrils. Tessa's legs buckled as the gravity returned to normal, but Ariana caught her with surprising strength. "You're injured," the luminarian said, her hands ghosting over Tessa's ribs where she'd impacted the shaft wall. "Let me." "No time," Tessa interrupted, though the pain in her side made her wince. "Save your strength. We're not safe yet." The door at the far end of the room burst open. 3 guards entered, their weapons raised. Behind them stood Kronlar himself, his massive frame filling the doorway. His eyes locked onto Tessa with predatory focus. "Impressive," he said, genuine appreciation in his voice. "You've caused quite a bit of trouble for a human. But now, I'm afraid, it's time to end this game." Tessa stepped forward, positioning herself between the guards and Ariana. "You're right about one thing," she said, her hand moving to her belt. "The game is over." She threw something at the guards, a small, spherical object that exploded into a cloud of shimmering particles. The guards opened fire, but their energy bolts dissipated harmlessly in the cloud. "Quantum field disperser," Tessa explained, allowing herself a small smile. "Expensive, but worth every credit for moments like this." Kronlar's face contorted with rage. He charged forward, seemingly unaffected by the dispersal field. Tessa had expected this. Beings of his size often had natural resistance to such technologies. What she hadn't expected was Ariana stepping forward, her hands raised. The markings on her arms began to glow with an intense light. "You abuse the gift of life," Ariana's voice resonated with power. "You twist it, sell it, destroy it. No more." Energy pulsed from her hands, and Krondar stumbled. His movements became sluggish, uncoordinated. The guards behind him collapsed, unconscious but alive. What are you doing to me?" Krondar demanded, his voice slurring. "Healing, in its way," Ariana replied. "Every being has a natural sleep cycle. I'm simply accelerating yours." Tessa stared in amazement as the massive jailer swayed on his feet before crashing to the floor. She'd never seen a Luminarian use their abilities as a weapon before. "That won't hold him for long," Ariana said, her voice returning to normal. "His biology is complex." "Then let's not wait around," Tessa replied, leading them toward the waste disposal chutes. "My ship is docked in the lower levels. If we can reach it." A new alarm sounded, different from the others. Tessa recognized it, the signal for orbital security forces. Someone had called in the authorities. "Time to find out if all my bribes paid off," Tessa muttered, helping Ariana into the chute. As they slid down toward the lower levels, she couldn't help but wonder if she'd just started something much bigger than a simple rescue mission. The sound of pursuit echoed above them, but for now, they were ahead of their hunters. The real question was, for how long? Tessa's ship, the Nightshade, darted through New Singapore's lower atmosphere, its stealth systems straining against the planetary defense grid scanning attempts. In the co-pilot's seat, Ariana watched the pursuing vessels with growing concern. "There are 7 ships following us," she observed, her iridescent eyes tracking their movement. "Their crews are determined. Angry. They can be as angry as they want," Tessa replied, her hands dancing across the controls. "They still have to catch us first." She activated a series of switches, and the ship's energy signature began to fluctuate wildly. "What are you doing?" "A little trick I learned from smugglers in the Outer Rim. We're going to disappear." The Nightshade's engines pulsed, releasing a cloud of charged particles that scattered the pursuit ship's sensor readings. They dove into a dense band of storm clouds, lightning crackling around their hull. When they emerged on the other side, they were alone. Tessa allowed herself a small smile before plotting a course for deep space. "You've done this before," Ariana said. It wasn't a question. "Once or twice." Tessa engaged the FTL drive, and the stars stretched into lines around them. "But usually with less company. Speaking of which, that thing you did back there, with Krondar. I thought Luminarians were purely healers." Ariana's markings dimmed slightly. "Life energy flows in many directions. We choose to use it for healing because that is our way. But in times of great need, it can be redirected. Redirected enough to take down the most notorious slave trader in the sector. Temporarily." Ariana's expression darkened. "He will wake angry, and he will not stop hunting us. I sense something different about him. His biology, as I said, is complex. Engineered, perhaps." Tessa nodded, considering this information. "Then we'll need help. Fortunately, I know just the place." The Nightshade emerged from FTL near an asteroid field on the edge of charted space. Tessa guided the ship through the floating rocks with practiced ease, finally approaching what appeared to be a particularly large asteroid. "Welcome to Haven," she said as a hidden hangar door opened in the asteroid's surface. "Home to the galaxy's largest collection of people who don't officially exist." Inside, the asteroid revealed itself to be a sprawling facility. Ships of various designs were docked in the cavernous space, while beings from dozens of species moved about their business. Most bore the look of fighters, refugees, or both. As they landed, a tall figure approached their ship. The being's crystalline body structure identified them as a prismation, another species often targeted by slavers for their unique abilities. Cutting it close, Tessa, the prismation said, their voice resonating like wind through crystal. We picked up chatter about the auction house. Kronlar's put a bounty on you both. Good to see you too, Vertex. Tessa helped Ariana from the ship. We need to talk to the council. It's time. Vertex's crystalline form shifted colors, indicating surprise. You found proof? Better. Tessa gestured to Ariana. I found a witness. One who's seen inside their operation and can confirm everything we've suspected. Ariana stepped forward. You've been gathering intelligence on the slave trade? For years, Vertex answered. Building a case, gathering allies. We believe Kronlar isn't working alone. There's something bigger behind the slave trade, something that goes all the way to the Galactic Council itself. The Council? Ariana's markings pulsed with shock. But they're supposed to protect. They're supposed to do a lot of things, Tessa interrupted. But corruption runs deep, and credits run deeper. We think someone's using the slave trade to fund something massive. Something bad. And now they'll be hunting us with everything they have, Vertex added. The question is, what do we do about it? Before anyone could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. A voice came over the intercom, multiple ships detected entering the system. Energy signatures match known slave trader vessels. Tessa's hand went to her weapon. How? We lost them in the atmosphere. Ariana's face went pale. The accelerated sleep, when I affected Kronlar's biology, there must have been a connection. He could have traced my energy signature. Then we don't have much time, Vertex said, their crystalline form shifting to a combat configuration. The facility's defenses will buy us some time, but we need to evacuate. No, Tessa said firmly. We've been running and hiding for too long. If they found us once, they'll find us again. She turned to Ariana. You've seen inside their organization. Will you help us fight them? Ariana looked around at the facility, at the beings who had found refuge here. Her markings began to glow with a steady, determined light. My people believe in healing, she said. And sometimes, to heal something properly, you must first cut out what is corrupt. She turned to Tessa. I will help you. But you must understand, this path may change us all. Tessa nodded grimly. Change is coming whether we want it or not. The only question is, will we be the ones controlling it? Above them, the first impacts of enemy weapons began to shake the asteroid. The battle for Haven, and perhaps the future of the galaxy, was about to begin. Haven's defense systems held against the initial assault, but the attacking ships maintained their position, establishing a blockade around the asteroid. Inside the facility's command center, Tessa studied the tactical displays with growing concern. They're not trying to break in, she realized. They're waiting for reinforcements. Vertex manipulated the holographic display with crystalline appendages. Our long-range sensors detect multiple fleets converging on our position. We have perhaps 6 hours before they arrive. Ariana stood before the gathered resistance leaders, a diverse group representing species that had suffered under the slave trade. Her markings glowed as she shared what she had learned during her captivity. The trade isn't just about profit, she explained. They're specifically targeting species with unique biological abilities. Luminarians for healing, prismations for energy manipulation, quantum sprites for their connection to subspace. They're building something. A weapon? Asked a scarred quantum sprite named Pulse. An army, Tessa corrected. Think about it, combine luminarian healing with prismation energy manipulation, add in quantum sprite teleportation abilities, they're creating the perfect soldiers. Which means someone's preparing for a war, Vertex concluded. But against whom? Everyone. Ariana's voice carried absolute certainty. I sensed it in Krondhar's mind during our connection. They believe the galaxy needs to be reset. Purified through conflict. They're religious fanatics with access to advanced bioengineering. The command center erupted in concerned murmurs. Tessa raised her voice to be heard. Then we stop them here. Now. Before they can complete whatever they're building. With what? Pulse demanded. We're refugees and rebels, not an army. No, Tessa agreed. We're something better. We're survivors who know their methods, their weaknesses. And now we have proof of their true agenda. She turned to Vertex. How many of our allies can reach us before their reinforcements arrive? The Prismation consulted the displays. Perhaps a third of our network. The others are too far. It'll have to be enough. Tessa activated the main communication array. Send out the call. Tell them everything Ariana has revealed. And contact every independent news network in range. It's time the galaxy sees what's really happening. As the messages went out, Ariana approached Tessa privately. There's something else. Something I didn't want to say in front of the others. She hesitated. During my connection with Krondhar, I sensed human DNA in his enhanced biology. Tessa froze. What? Someone in your government's military research division is involved. They're using human genetic adaptability as a base for their experiments. That's why they needed my people's healing abilities, to stabilize the mutations. The revelation hit Tessa like a physical blow. She had suspected corruption in the Galactic Council, but her own species? How high does this go? High enough to make this even more dangerous than we thought. Ariana's markings pulsed with concern. Are you sure you want to continue? Once we expose this. They're using my species' DNA to create weapons for genocide. Tessa's voice was cold. There's no turning back now. Over the next few hours, ships began arriving, independent traders, mercenary groups, and others who had suffered under the slave trade. Each brought weapons, supplies, or vital intelligence. The asteroid's hangar filled with vessels of all sizes and origins. Vertex coordinated the growing fleet while Pulse's people established quantum communication links between the ships. Ariana worked with other freed captives, sharing information about the slavers' operations and tactics. Tessa watched the preparations from the command center, her mind racing through possibilities. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy with nearly unlimited resources. But they had something the enemy didn't: desperation born of justice. The first enemy vessels will be in weapons range in 20 minutes, Vertex announced. Our allies are in position. Tessa looked at the tactical display one last time. Their ships were arranged in an apparently scattered formation around the asteroid, appearing disorganized to enemy sensors, but actually positioned perfectly for what she had planned. Send to all ships, she ordered. Execute Operation Sunbreak on my mark. She turned to Ariana. Ready? The Luminarian nodded, her markings bright with determination. They thought they could use life itself as a weapon. It's time they learned why that was a mistake. Above them, the first wave of enemy ships dropped out of FTL, their weapons charging. The battle that would decide the fate of countless species was about to begin, and this time, the hunters were about to become the hunted. The void of space erupted in chaos as Operation Sunbreak began. The seemingly scattered resistance ships suddenly moved in perfect coordination, their formations creating a complex web of crossfire. At the center of it all, Haven's asteroid base pulsed with accumulated energy. Now! Tessa commanded. Vertex and the other Prismations channeled their energy through Haven's crystalline core, creating a massive prismatic field. As enemy weapons' fire struck the field, it split into thousands of smaller beams, redirecting the attackers' own power against them. Krondar's flagship emerged from the chaos, twice the size of any other vessel in the battle. His voice boomed across all communication channels. You cannot stop the purification. The galaxy must be cleansed and remade. The only thing being cleansed today is your corruption, Tessa replied, guiding the Nightshade through the battlefield. Ariana sat beside her, hands pressed against a modified console that connected her to the other freed healers throughout the Resistance fleet. The Luminarians worked in concert, their healing powers reversed into a weapon against the slave ship's hybrid crews. Not to kill, but to undo the very genetic modifications that made them dangerous. Their biology is destabilizing, Ariana reported, her markings blazing with effort. But Krondar's ship is protected by some kind of energy field. We can't reach them. Then we do this the hard way. Tessa opened a channel to the Resistance fleet. All ships, execute Pattern Delta. Focus fire on the flagship's stern quadrant. The Resistance ships moved as one, concentrating their attack on a single point. Quantum sprites teleported torpedoes past the flagship's shields while prismation energy beams probed for weaknesses. Krondar's ship returned fire, its enhanced weapons tearing through several Resistance vessels. But for every ship lost, 2 more took its place, the survivors of countless raids and auctions fighting with the fury of the long oppressed. Their shield is weakening, Vertex reported. But our energy reserves are critical. We cannot maintain the prismatic field much longer. Tessa studied the tactical display, noting how Krondar's ship was positioning itself. He's not trying to win, she realized. He's trying to reach Haven. He wants the data we've collected, proof of who's really behind all this. The human-military connection, Ariana said. If that gets out. Exactly. Vertex, drop the prismatic field on my mark. Ariana, get ready. We're ending this now. The Nightshade dove toward the flagship, weaving through debris and weapons fire. Behind them, the Resistance fleet pressed their attack, forcing Krondar's remaining ships to cluster around their leader. Field dropping in 3, 2, 1. The protective energy around Haven vanished. Krondar's ship immediately charged its main weapon, aiming directly at the asteroid base. You force my hand, his voice rumbled across the comm. If we cannot remake the galaxy, we will at least erase those who would corrupt it. Look again, Tessa replied. In the moment the prismatic field dropped, every quantum sprite in the Resistance fleet had teleported to predetermined positions. Now, they activated their abilities in unison, creating a web of quantum entanglement around the flagship. Ariana and the other Luminarians seized their chance, their combined healing power surging through the quantum web. This time, there was no barrier to stop them. Krondar's scream of rage turned to confusion as his enhanced biology began to break down. The hybrid crews throughout his fleet faced the same fate, their artificial evolution undoing itself. What have you done to me? His voice was changing, becoming less inhuman. Healed you, Ariana answered, her voice strained but firm. Returned you to what you were before they twisted you. Before they made you believe in their lies about purification. The flagship's weapons powered down as its crew lost their enhancements. Across the fleet, slave ships fell silent as their hybrid troops reverted to their original forms. It's over, Tessa broadcast to all channels. We have proof of everything, the illegal experimentation, the military connection, the true purpose of the slave trade. It's already been transmitted to every major news network in the galaxy. She turned to Ariana, who nodded in confirmation. The data is spreading. They cannot stop it now. In the aftermath, as Resistance ships began rescue operations for the former hybrid troops, Tessa and Ariana stood in Haven's observation dome, watching the debris of battle float past. What happens now? Ariana asked, her markings finally dim with exhaustion. "Now we rebuild," Tessa replied. "And we make sure nothing like this happens again." She turned to the Luminarian. "Your people, all the species they targeted, they'll need protection while the Galactic Council sorts itself out. And you?" Ariana's iridescent eyes studied her carefully. "What will you do?" Tessa looked out at the stars, thinking of all the other Kronthars that might still be out there, all the corrupted officials yet to be exposed. "I'll do what humans do best, adapt, survive, and fight for what's right." She smiled slightly. "Want to help?" Ariana's markings glowed with renewed energy. "I believe that would be an acceptable use of my healing abilities." Above them, ships from across the galaxy continued to arrive, not to fight now, but to help. The slave trade had wanted to use the combined powers of different species as a weapon. Instead, those same powers, freely given and united in purpose, had become the key to victory. The cleanup would take time, the healing even longer. But as Tessa watched the gathered ships, she knew that something new had been born here. Not the purified galaxy the slavers had wanted, but something better, a galaxy where differences were not weapons to be exploited, but strengths to be celebrated. Freedom, it seemed, had finally dawned.